Oklahoma's construction industry is booming right now, so much so that two things are hard to come by: building supplies and skilled labor. The legislature hopes to address the issue with an apprenticeship bill aimed at students as young as 16. It's a start, but more needs to be done. In this week's in-depth conversation, Susan Cadot learns more from educators and industry leaders.
Thank you, Rich. Yeah, this is something everyone's going to want to hear across the state of Oklahoma. Post-COVID, we're looking at people trying to find jobs. And guess what? There are some to be had. And all you need to do is listen to this next discussion to find out what you can do for a win-win for everybody. I'd like to introduce my panel of guests today. We have Commissioner Leslie Osborn. She's Commissioner of the Department of Labor for the state of Oklahoma. We have Dr. Marcie Mack, who is the State Director of Oklahoma's Career Tech. And then we have Debra Wojtek, who is the Public Relations and Outreach Officer for the Construction Industries Board. I'd like to thank all of you for joining us today. As we get into this, I'd like to note that we have an all-female panel to discuss the construction industry in Oklahoma. And Commissioner, I want to come to you first. Why is that? What's happening in the construction industry in Oklahoma?
Well, at the Department of Labor, we're tasked with workplace safety, and we also do a lot of reporting to the federal government on what jobs in the state are at a critical need of not being able to find workforce. Those are compiled and put out pretty frequently from the federal Department of Labor so that people can really watch those trends of this is a state where we have, say, a lot of manufacturing, so we would need a lot more roles that can be fit at the career tech, or that we have a lot of aerospace industry. And so it's important for us to be working on the engineering programs at Oklahoma State and OU. So that's what our role is in this. This is something in Oklahoma that there are quite a few shortages of workers in. So this would be a great field in several different areas for people to look at if they need a job or they're looking for a future career.
All right, Dr. Mack, what is your role? What do you do in the construction industry around Oklahoma? And what can you tell folks about the needs here?
What we get to do in career and technology education is provide a qualified workforce. So when we're talking about the construction industry, that is a core piece that we get to provide across the state. We're very fortunate that we do have our 29 technology centers with 58 campuses across the state that provide specific training as we look at the construction industry, whether it be in a short-term program for specific reskilling or upskilling, or if it is for a full licensure program where individuals may not have any experience in construction industry, and that is their career choice. So we can take them from start to finish. We also have an opportunity to have 5 construction programs within our high schools. We are working to expand that, as well as a footprint with our partners in the Department of Corrections and the Office of Juvenile Affairs, for as individuals, as they transition from incarceration back into our communities, making sure that they have a skill. And so we do have construction trades within our correctional facilities in helping individuals obtain the licensures. We also have partnerships with industries who may be interested in apprenticeships or internships. If individuals aren't really sure what area of the construction field that they really want to be engaged in, we can help them explore those opportunities, because there are multiple careers that provide for great wages and provide for a great avenue for individuals to be able to provide for themselves, their family, and make a significant difference.
And I want to come back to that in just a minute, because that's something I really want to do a little bit of a deep dive in, Dr. Mack. Ms. Wojtek, I want to come to you as far as talking about the needs in the industry. You're with the Construction Industries Board. Is there a need, and how big is it? Not just for manpower, but is there a need for supply chains?
There is a significant need. You talked about coming out of COVID and the effects that it might have on the industry. What's really interesting is construction was deemed essential. And so there was never anybody really let go in the construction industry. They kept working, and the need for the construction workers has only grown since then, because now there's a demand on how buildings are to be built. They're building them differently. They're building, instead of cubicle farms because of COVID, they're building more office rooms. And so the need for construction workers has only been exacerbated through this. And so the need is greater than it was before. And so, and it's not just the labor side where you're digging ditches and breaking your back. It's the skilled labor that is like the electricians and plumbing and HVAC, which takes years to get to that level. And so getting started, people being able to start in that, they'll quickly be able to move up into the more higher paying construction careers.
Yeah, Commissioner, I did want to ask you, what all falls under the umbrella of construction? It's not just building a house, right?
So we're looking at things like residential buildings to commercial to actually industrial facilities. So we can be looking at anything from an architect or an engineer into something that is to the much more detailed portions of construction, which would be concrete, drywall, electricians, plumbing. And I think that's where we see the career techs do a great job of training with a lot of those. But we also have the Oklahoma Building Trades Unions, which offer a great plethora of apprenticeships that people can go straight into and straight onto the job as an apprentice and be earning money while they're learning what they're doing.
And hey, listen, Commissioner, these aren't low-paying jobs, are they?
Now, these can be very good jobs.
All right, Dr. Mack, I want to get back into the education for joining in. Let's tell folks, if they're interested in getting involved in this, what's the first step? Where do they go? How long will it take them to get a degree? Do they need a degree? I read an article, a gentleman who's a teacher in Seminole, I think at Gordon Cooper, talked about, they'll have someone who has no experience in construction will walk in thinking they can just get a job, and they don't even know what a 2x4 is. So you do need training, correct?
We have an opportunity, just as you mentioned, some people may have a background in construction. So with various career pathways that are out there, they're on and off ramps. So if someone has familiarity with construction, they may just need specific, they want to get into masonry, as a commissioner mentioned, they want to get in masonry. They may just need to have that focused career field so that they can obtain those skill sets and then have that work experience and move on into that particular specialty area. If you have someone who is interested in construction, but they're not really sure, they haven't had an opportunity to engage in any sections of the construction industry, they can start looking at that and start with the basic fundamentals and go through that process. For someone, if they are going to, you mentioned about how many hours, what does that take? So in a year program, if they were an all-day adult student, for example, they could finish that program for entry-level certifications in a year. If you're a high school student, you could do that in a 2-year process. They would come in the morning or afternoon as an opportunity and be able to enter into the construction field. With each of our programs, there is that opportunity for that work-based learning component, whether that be a full-fledged apprenticeship, whether that be an internship, whether that be multiple sections to where they get to work in the various fields. So maybe they would work with an electrician for a certain time period. They would work with HVAC, then they could work with plumbing, so that they could see really where their passion is. Where is that area of construction that they want to truly engage in, and then build upon that. And as was mentioned, maybe work to own their own company, various things that they can continue to grow. So there are a multitude of avenues for individuals to engage, and that engagement doesn't start, it can start well before you graduate high school. That conversation can start with our elementary students to make sure that we're making them career aware. Being in the workforce area, our goal is to make sure that we have that continual pipeline. So business and industry is our primary customer. We have to make sure that we are adapting to that. And we have to, the other piece to it is we have to make sure that individuals are aware. Not only our current students, but our future students, their parents, and industry, making sure that we're keeping that connection is vital to making sure that we can keep the construction industry with the workforce that they need.
Ms. Wojtek, a student who came out of the career training said their first job out of training after 2 years was mid 40s per year. Is that typical or is that atypical for starting out? And now that person is making upwards of $70,000 a year. So what's kind of the range of income that folks can expect?
You know, the range is incredibly wide. I can only speak really for the industries underneath us, but it's in the 50,000 range, getting into the industry and getting started, especially if you already have the career tech or apprenticeship knowledge base going into those. You typically start out higher at a more advanced pay, just because you already have more skill that you don't have to learn on the job.
Are women joining this training or joining the workforce more lately that you have seen?
I have seen that women are joining more. I don't know if it is because it's more essential or if because the stigma of it's a man's world or whatever is starting to deteriorate. It's slowly moved up to just above 10%, which still seems really, really low, but just 5 years ago, it was closer to 5%. So, I mean, doubled in a very short amount of time. It's not as backbreaking as I said before. I mean, there's female electricians that very, very successful. And the fact that there's not this glass ceiling necessarily in this industry as there is in other industries, because if you have this skill, if you have this certificate, this is what you're worth. And so there's not that competition based of trying to make as much as a man or whatever. It's already there and you can do your job.
Commissioner, this is something that there will always be a need for. There is great job security in this, correct?
Something I'd like to add to what Debra was saying is that we see a lot of pay discrepancy with men and women in some professions. The norm is that women across the United States make about 81% in general compared to a man's salary. However, the interesting thing to me is when you continually look at the stats in construction, that's 99%. So we see very little of that discrimination in wage for gender, which I thought was a very interesting thing. And I dug into it a little more to make sure I was seeing that correctly. But I think that's something else that we need to look at for young women going into these fields.
Right. And with these skills, like you said, there are a lot of different activities that fall underneath the construction umbrella. It's not necessarily standing up on a roof all day and hammering. There's so many different things to do.
Right. And I know one of them that we hear a lot about being a critical need in Oklahoma, I think the average age of a plumber is close to 60, and that's problematic. I know that I believe, and I'll ask Dr. Mack about this, I think the Career Tech I know they have several plumbing programs. I think one is new, maybe in the Oklahoma City area, Middale perhaps. I know there's quite a few apprenticeship programs through the building trades unions that you can look up. But I think what people have to realize is plumbing is not just holding a plunger. Plumbing gets into detailed infrastructure. For instance, in any healthcare facility, the actual oxygen lines that come in that are very vital in ICUs and different areas are done with plumbers. And so there's a lot more than what we think of typically. And if we can educate people on that and what a great career path it is, what a great demand there is in Oklahoma, I think that we can really work on filling that need.
Right. And my plumber makes a lot of money, so they're doing pretty well.
I just wanted to add that in the construction industry, like the commissioner was saying, somebody can start out, really, really basic and end up owning a business without having to go to college, without this massive student loan debts or anything else. And it's truly the American dream. And no matter what happens, you still have this skill that is transferable anywhere.
That is an excellent point. And quickly, as we wind up, Dr. Mack, I want to come to you. A 2017 survey of young people considering careers showed that only 3% of them were interested in the construction trade. So here we are 4 years later from that survey. Do you see that changing?
I see that we have to make that change. We have to make sure that we're being more diligent and having that conversation with individuals. We talk about having, you ask students when they're sophomore, juniors, and seniors, what are you going to do when you finish high school? We have to start having that career awareness at the elementary and making sure that we are engaging industry so that individuals potentially what they may envision, just as was stated by both individuals on here, what they may envision as the construction industry has changed. It has changed over time. There are many pathways, there are many careers that are available in the construction industry. And so we have to make sure that we are educating individuals about the opportunity, and that has to start with our young students.
If someone's hearing this and says, I want to check into that, they're not, what do they do?
So if someone wants to check into the construction industry, what is available, we have resources on our website at okcareertech.org that they can go in and actually go into OK Career Guide, log in as a guest, and they could do an interest inventory. They can see what skill sets maybe are most beneficial for individuals who want to go into the construction industry. They can go in and see what jobs may be available, what sectors, what the wages are, and all those particular things. They can go in and explore what that might look like. And it doesn't matter if you are in elementary or you are an adult who's looking for a career change, those resources are there.
Wonderful, thank you. And Ms. Wojtek, any final words for everyone?
I think that this is a great opportunity, and those that have kids and those that are looking for that career change just always need to consider that there is growth opportunity. It's not backbreaking, and it can lead to an amazing future.
And Commissioner, we'll let you have the last word.
Huge fan of our career tech programs and system. We have one of the best in the nation. But one other thing to also look up, if you are one of those that has your notepad out, like you said, is to look at the Oklahoma Building Trades Unions. They put out a publication on their website once a year that lists every apprenticeship program in the state and how you get into that. Most of them are free education, and you do night classes that are free while you're doing apprenticeship work.
It's wonderful. I want to thank all of you for joining us to giving us what I think is vital information for Oklahoma's economy and Oklahoma's workforce. And thank all of you for your time and your insight.
Thank you for having us.